Before we get started, I'm going to bring out my wonderful co-host.
I come from a family of veterinarians and animal lovers. We had dogs and cats and lizards and frogs and kind of just a whole menagerie. And I've always been really passionate about holistic health for myself and for my animals.
Carnivore is not my first dog food company. I actually started the very first commercial raw food diet back in the 1980s. And everybody told me I was crazy and it was organic and who's going to pay for organic?
Right.
And I was never going to make any money, which I didn't. There's so much marketing, and that's what that whole grain-free thing is about.
If you feel a tug on that gut and something is telling you this might not be right, I maybe should explore something else, listen to that.
And it can change over time.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is, we think that once we've figured it out, then it's done. And then as soon as you think that you've mastered it, then you get a good smack from the universe.
We're incredibly grateful to have you here today, and I'm very excited to kind of be able to share some of that cat side with our community because they definitely don't get enough of it. How did you become the Two Crazy Cat Ladies in the brand sense? I can guess how you became Two Crazy Cat Ladies just regularly.
What does that mean?
Right? When it comes to our cats, they don't drink from the water bowl in the same way that dogs do.
Well, and cats are also obligate carnivores, a little bit different than dogs. Their tongues are made to lick meat off the bone and to groom themselves. One of the biggest things for cat people to realize is that just because you try something once doesn't mean it's a one and done. What do you always say? Persevere.
Patience and perseverance pays.
If you get your cat to a medium grade wet food and that's where they thrive, congratulations.
Yeah.
Continue that. What's next for the Two Crazy Cat Ladies?
Well, it's after 5, so we need a drink.
Steiner's is next door. We'll see everyone there in 10 minutes.
In this episode of the BK Petcast, we have our final book tour event, which was done in front of a 50 to 60 person live audience. It was insane. We brought in Carter Easler from CBD Dog Health, Maria Ringo, the co-founder of Carnivore, as well as Jay and Adrian, also known as the Two Crazy Cat Ladies. We talked about all things pet food, the grain-free versus grain-inclusive debate, and Jay and Adrian share some key insights for our cat parents. Before we get started, I'm going to bring out my wonderful co-host. He works for CBD Dog Health and Microbiome, huge plant and fungi advocate, and just an incredible person to be around. Can we bring out Carter Easler? Carter,
Hi,
thanks for
everybody.
being here with me today.
Thanks, Bryce. I'm so excited to sit beside you across from you here in this lovely shop. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Really excited to talk to you today about holistic pet health and see where we kind of overlap. I come to these events always, and I'm constantly reminded we're often just speaking the same language. From different perspectives. We've learned a lot and continue to learn, and this is how we kind of keep that information getting out there. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Really appreciate you being here. Before we get started, I want to know more about you. How did you get into the CBD and mushroom space, and specifically the pet space too?
Well, I come from a family of veterinarians and animal lovers. We had dogs and cats and lizards and frogs and kind of just a whole menagerie. And I've always been really passionate about holistic health for myself and for my animals. And that all really kind of collided with a meeting with the woman who founded CBD Dog Health and Myco Dog. I went to her rescue farm in Florida, and I got to kind of observe her working firsthand. She is known in her community as like the local cannabis witch. So people, when their veterinarians didn't know what to do, they would bring their animals to her, and she would really make a difference for their lives and take them in, get them on fresh food diet using cannabis and mushrooms. And you'd see these old dogs who had previously been given up on have a new lease on life. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is where I see myself. And so started doing that, and it has just grown and grown, and we have continued to be able to advocate for these really powerful modalities and see people like all these folks here who also are getting help. And that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, I was talking to my mom a couple weeks ago, and I'm trying my hardest to get her on medicinal mushrooms.
Yeah.
It's not going overly well. She's still weird about taking a product with a dog on it, but I keep telling her it's human grade, I promise. But one question she asked me that I think is really interesting is she said, why wouldn't I just go to the store and buy the mushrooms and eat them instead of eating an actual extract or the actual medicine?
Okay.
Why would somebody choose one or the other, or what different scenarios might each of those be best in?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is mushrooms are absolutely something that you should have in your diet just from the store in an unprocessed way for humans and dogs. The types of micronutrients in there, as well as the dietary fiber that they offer, are incredible for gut health and for the body. And so absolutely we should be eating mushrooms, but why we also have extracts is because there are certain medicinal compounds found in mushrooms that you wouldn't necessarily get out of a culinary mushroom just by eating it. That is because just to get into kind of like the science of it, the structure of a lot of these mushrooms, they have a really tough cell wall called a chitin that has to be broken down. And so we have to break it down with hot water or sometimes alcohol in order to release all these components like beta glucans and terpenes. And also, some of these mushrooms are not edible. They're not delicious like our lion's manes and our maitake and shiitake, which we may be really familiar. You may see them in the grocery store all the time and not know that they're medicinal and have anti-cancerous properties and immunoregulatory properties. But there are also plenty of mushrooms that really, they grow on hardwood. They are really woody in texture and must be broken down. They are not delicious. So it's also a palatability thing, Reishi, for instance, is very gross. It's really bitter. And so when you have it in an extracted form, the way that MycoDog that we use it is in a glycerin suspension. So it's got a sweet taste to it, even though there's no sugar in it. It's sugar alcohol. And that kind of helps for the palatability for dogs, especially or cats who don't want to take these things that have a really pungent taste. It allows it to be sort of masked and have them keep taking it.
So if somebody wanted to feed their dog mushrooms, how should they prepare them? Do you feed them raw? Do you cook them down?
Absolutely cook them down. Yeah. That cell wall, you can break it down with heat mostly. So just a dry saute is fine. You can, if you're cooking with any kind of oil that's necessary in your dog's diet, you can use that as well. But really, you will see the change in texture in the mushroom. Once you can really see it kind of change form, then you're going to be pretty good. Probably like a 5 to 10 minute saute is plenty on any of these dietary mushrooms.
So you have a pretty extensive background with cannabis, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people hear CBD these days. It's a huge buzzword right now. There's tons of new products on the market. But when a pet parent is choosing a product and they're trying it for the first time, how do they know how much to give?
That's kind of the golden question, to be honest. We live in a culture of really strong traditions of Western kind of pharmaceutical care, and the way that dosage is prescribed in those settings is milligrams per kilogram, and it is a single molecule with a single target. Carprofen, this much is how much you take to get these anti-inflammatory benefits. It's a little bit different with cannabis-based medicine because it is, when we talk about CBD oil, it's so much more than CBD. CBD is one cannabinoid of which we have discovered 149. And so when you take a full spectrum hemp extract, you are getting this beautiful symphony of all these different bioactive molecules. And those cannabinoids are just one kind of grouping of them. So back to your question about dosage. The effects are going to be different for different animals based on how their innate system, what's called an endocannabinoid system, responds to it. But what we can do, accepting that it's going to be a little bit different for different animals, is look at kind of what conditions, what different groupings of conditions typically require in terms of dosage. Because you're not going to give the same dosage to a 4-year-old lab that has a little bit of anxiety as you would to, say, a 17-year-old Chihuahua with cancer. We've more late-stage diseases. Senior dogs are usually going to have more deficiencies in their system and require higher dosages. So we really recommend a more an approach that is based upon the condition, the severity of the issue, and then leaving room for the fact that we all have individual animals. And what is great about this way of dosing and why it works is because there is a really a broad window of effect. So with cannabis medicine, you don't necessarily have to land on this specific dose in order to get the effects. You can kind of land within a window, so it's forgiving, and it's also quite safe. There's a ton of research that shows that even at extremely high doses, like doses that you would never want to give your animal, they do these safety trials that are kind of cruel, but they have tested up to extremely high levels and had no adverse effects. A little bit of incontinence, lethargy, they get stoned, which is not the goal, but I would rather have a dog that's a little sleepy than in pain often.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I resonate with that so much because even at home, our dogs, we have a 35-pound Aussie with a lot of anxiety.
Yep.
She gets one full dropper of the horse CBD.
Yes.
And then we have a 60-pound German, different mix with not as much anxiety. And he gets like a regular dropper of the cat one, which is like a far smaller dosage, and it obviously doesn't line up with their weight there. So
exactly.
I totally resonate with what you're saying.
Yeah, the big dog, small dog kind of paradigm is one of the first places that you see the difference in how CBD works, because these little terriers and Jack Russells and Yorkies and Chihuahuas that are like that main dose is probably a small dose. It may not be the same for them as a dog that's pretty chill, just hanging out here.
It almost seems like the dosage might be the opposite. The smaller the dog, the more they need.
It often is, yes.
That's so funny. So is CBD something that is just for when a dog comes down with an ailment or gets sick, or can we also use it for the average healthy dog as some sort of preventative medicine?
I think that this is a challenging question because I think there's a few different minds about this. There are plenty of instances where we have dogs that are seemingly healthy, that are doing great, that have perhaps predispositions to certain diseases. If you've got a wiener dog who's got the potential to have some spinal issues and some, luxating patella or otherwise, or you have golden retrievers who are often getting cancer. These are cases where you may have a very healthy young dog, but you can use it preventatively as something that can, if something might be coming down the line, that can be very helpful. There are also a lot of cases where I think this audience is one of 2.0 pet parents who are very aware of where their dogs are and are anticipating disease before it's in crisis. And so to have a tool that, you may not be giving it to them all the time, but you can see like, hey, my dog is experiencing a little bit more inflammation right now. He's a little bit more tired right now. We went on a long hike and he's gonna, his knees are gonna be hurting. In the same breath, I say, like, I don't think that a dog that is really healthy, that's a young puppy that has nothing wrong with them, needs to be on just a high dose every day. We can get really trigger happy with our new toys.
More is better.
Yeah, more is better. What else can I do? And
desensitize the animals so that when they eat it, then it doesn't help.
That's it. Maria Ringo just.
Speaking out of turn
Yes.
here, I can't help it.
It
sounds so
it's-
much like homeopathic medicine.
Yes, I mean, what she's talking about, desensitizing the system, what's really cool about cannabis medicine, these molecules, CBD, mimic compounds that the body makes naturally. And so when the body is deficient in things like anandamide and these chemicals 2-AG, CBD can come in and it looks just like that molecule and it goes into the same spot. So that's really amazing. It can help the body function and balance itself. But if we start providing this alternative at a young age and don't allow the body its own impetus to create those molecules for itself, we can tell the body, oh, you don't actually have to do that, and it'll go, okay, I won't.
It seems like I feel like I've heard when people talk about like ADHD medication and stuff, a lot of that can supply almost synthetic dopamine, and that in turn could drop your natural dopamine levels or the production of them.
Yeah,
that's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean it is still quite safe, and it's a gentle effect. These have adaptogenic properties, so if something is underactive in the system, it is going to increase the activity of these different capabilities. If it is overactive, so you have too much inflammation, it is going to rein in inflammation. So it has this. It's not just like a unidirectional effect. And in cases like this, that can be beneficial.
Absolutely. Well, I think this is a great segue to bring on our first guest.
Let's.
So our first guest is one of the smartest people I've ever met. She's the co-founder of Carnivore and a former homeopath. Please give it up for Maria Ringo.
Maria Ringo.
Thanks so much
Hey,
for being
everybody.
here today.
I loved listening to that and actually shouting out when I shouldn't have. But
You were
what
very
you were
welcome
saying,
to.
well, it's like this whole, when we are talking about medicine that is actually effective for an animal.
Yes.
We go by symptoms. We go by vital force. What you're saying about the little chihuahua,
Yes,
right? It's
yes.
not about how much the animal weighs. It's what is the energy of that animal?
Yep.
What is the energy of that animal demanding right now to be its best?
Right.
And a little dog might need a big dose to really burst through that energy.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? And a bigger dog, chill, doesn't need a lot, right?
Yep.
So I love that. Thank you for educating me about
Absolutely.
CBD. I learned a lot.
Maria, I think
Yes.
a lot of people here probably know your brand, but they might not know a lot about you. So can you kind of give us some insight into your history and how you got to be the co-founder of Carnivore?
Well, Carnivore is not my first dog food company. I actually started the very first commercial raw food diet back in the 1980s. I was 25. I knew nothing except I knew that my bull mastiffs were not going to do well on kibble. And so I started doing research. I actually visited the world famous herbalist Juliette de Berkeley-Levy. I literally sat at her knee and learned from her about natural rearing. And you'll hear me talk a lot about, it's not just about natural diet, it's about natural rearing. Everything in the dog's environment, everything in the family's environment, right? So I started a little company called Sojourner Farms, and it was like raw meat. You had to go to the store and get the raw meat, and you mix it up with this mixture of like oats and herbs and stuff, and you moistened it and fed it to the animal. And everybody told me I was crazy, and it was organic, and who's going to pay for organic?
Right.
And I was never going to make any money, which I didn't. But I sold the company. So I met my husband, Dave, and I moved to Canada, and I sold the company to a group of investors who changed the name of Sojourner Farms to Sojo's, and they changed it. They did a little freeze-dried thingy dooey with it. And for 20 years, Ward did a very good business, and he sold it to Wellness. And then Dave and I was a homeopathic doctor. I'm still a homeopath. I'm not actually, I am retired. I don't take cases, but I still do my licensing. I still have my license because I love it. I love everything you were talking about. It's like, oh God, just solving people's problems with energetic medicine that is not contingent on the body weight. Oh, you're singing my song. Anyway, so I am a homeopathic physician, and Dave and I decided that there were a lot of people who couldn't or wouldn't feed raw. How can we make it easier for them? How can we make it accessible? Because we can talk about it today. It's kind of scary. It can be scary and intimidating. And so we created Carnivore, which is really clean and green, but it's not processed. It's mixed, mashed, baked really quick, 4 minutes, just enough to kill the pathogens, and then cool air dried. That's it. And it looks like a kibble. So you don't have to think thawing it, adding stuff to it. You don't have to think about all that.
Yeah.
It's, it's not for everybody, but it's for a lot of people who just like, okay, my dog's having problems. They're itchy. I need something clean. I need something that's not super expensive, but I don't want to feed crappy kibble. What can I do? So you can start with carnivore. We have a lot of raw feeders on it because it's convenient. You can mix it with raw. You can do anything you need to do with it. We're so proud of it. We like to call it the bridge to raw. And my husband and I put our heads together. Dave was he was president of a chain of retail stores in Canada, and he was privy to how crappy kibble is made, and we were like, oh no, we're not doing that. No. So we learned a lot.
Maria, I'm curious.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk a lot before about the difference between synthetic vitamins and whole food sources of vitamins. And it's, I think, another one of these parallels with cannabis medicine where, people think that it's just CBD. And as I was saying, it's all these different things. And their relationship to one another is just as important as the compounds themselves. Can you talk about kind of really why we need to be focused on these
Such a great question,
balance?
Carter, because, and I'll try to, I've done whole, 2-hour seminars on this, but I promise I will. Reader's Digest version. Whole foods contain all the nutrients needed. Whole foods contain a family of co-nutrients that, when ingested in the body recognizes them and knows what to do. Synthetic vitamins are synthetic nutrients of any kind, proteins, vitamins, minerals, enzymes. They are unidimensional. Okay, try not to get too technical. But when you eat a carrot, there's vitamin A. And vitamin A is surrounded by hundreds of nutrients that we don't even know the names of.
Right.
We don't know how they all work, but they do. So you ingest the vitamin A in that carrot, and the vitamin A does its job and makes your eyesight better, just to try to simplify things. When you take retinol, which is the effective ingredient in vitamin A, if you ask food scientists, it is one-dimensional. It doesn't have that family of co-nutrients around it. So what does the body do with it? The body is very smart. It does one of two things. It either tries to excrete this unknown xenobiotic substance, unknown, foreign.
What does xenobiotic mean?
Foreign.
Got it.
So it's a foreign substance to the body. The body's like, what is this? Where's the rest of its family? I don't know what to do with this. It'll do one of two things. Excrete it through the kidneys, through the lungs, through the skin, through the liver, through the GI. Or it will store that retinol in the fat and wait for the family of nutrients to show up, and then it will metabolize. What happens when that retinol lodges in the fat for too long? It becomes toxic waste.
Right.
So what do you see here? You see the detox organs being completely stressed out no matter what.
Right.
So no matter which way it goes, the detox organs, the kidneys, the lungs, the liver, the GI, the skin is the biggest detox organ. It's going to get stressed. So if you want your dog to, or your cat or your hamster or your baby to be constantly struggling on a hamster wheel of trying to find the right nutrients to do the right things to keep the cells doing the only two things they do, heal or grow, because the other option is death. Cells don't have a lot of switches. They're either repairing themselves, they're either growing, or they're dead. So if you want healing and growth, you have to ingest the whole food. Because the whole food has all those co-nutrients. It will know what to do. The detox organs are then not stressed. And if they're not stressed, you don't have an itchy dog. You don't have metabolic acidosis. Metabolic acidosis is when the kidneys cannot function properly and you've got all this acid building up in the body. Right. It's specific to the kidneys.
You've talked about the difference between alkaline foods and more acidic foods before. I think a lot of the time that's associated with foods that are more processed, correct?
Correct. But you know what else is a really acidic food is meat. So it's not a simple thing. It's not black and white. It's really about the balance in the body. So the blood has to be between 7.35 and 7.45 pH, period. And that's a very narrow range. And each number on the pH scale is 10 times more than the previous. It's not... Right. It's a lot. So a difference between 2 acidity and 3 acidity is 10 times. Okay? It's a lot. So blood is this very narrow pH range we have to stay within. So when you talk about acidosis or alkalinosis, something like that, either too alkaline or too acid, and it's easier to get too acidic. Way easier because of the processed food diet. Processed food is probably the number one thing that's going to cause acidosis. Right. And it's the easiest thing to avoid, but it's so easy to take up, like cereal, breakfast cereal, right? People want to know what's the difference between carnivore and extruded kibble. Everything. Extrusion requires heat, acidity. There's dead food in there. It's not, I don't even call it food. It's just dead stuff forced into a shape, and then they spray on fats and flavors and preservatives, and they throw synthetic nutrients in it, and they mix it all together, and they say, here's dinner. Right? That's completely acidic. Right. There's nothing to prevent the kidneys from going into overdrive, and then the kidneys will shut down. And then you're in metabolic acidosis, and then you're in trouble.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, what you said really struck a chord with me. Nothing is black and white. And I think you were the person that really taught me about the whole grain-free debacle. And I came to you and I said,
I remember.
Maria, everybody's scared of grains. Everybody's blaming legumes. You use legumes in your recipes.
Yeah.
But you told me, you said, it's not about vilifying one ingredient or another. It's about the balance.
Right.
And when you feed things in an appropriate amount, if we go back to, the ancestral diet that a lot of us are trying to mimic, dogs might have gotten processed legumes from the stomachs of
pre-digested.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
And that's kind of what you use, right?
That's right.
The original fermented food.
Yeah.
That's right. Right. And sprouting, which is what we do. So the legumes in carnivore are all sprouted. Hugely changes. That's a whole nother lecture. That's another 2-hour thing. We won't go into it. But it completely changes the nature of that food. And it is a whole food. And it is sprouted. So it's got everything in that seed that would become a tree or a plant is now released from the sprouting. And there are literally billions of nutrients that are then released so that if you don't process it too much, which we don't, your animal can actually take it in with what? Its family of co-nutrients. They're all there. So the body knows what to do. So there's no stress on the lungs, the kidneys, right? There's no stress on the GI. Your itchy ear dog starts to feel better because their skin isn't constantly detoxing.
So for a pet parent who's hearing this right now and doesn't know if their food has synthetics in it, how do they identify if something is a synthetic versus the whole food source?
Is it a chemical? Is it something your grandmother would have put into her diet? Is it a food? Then it's if it's a synthetic. Even vitamin E, tocopherol, that's a synthetic vitamin E. So if it's a chemical name, it's a synthetic. Also, one of my pet peeves is protein fractions, like pea protein.
Oh, yeah.
That's not necessarily synthetic, but it's a piece of a protein. It's a piece of a food. It's not a whole food.
And it's a marketing tactic to a certain extent, right?
Totally.
Because they don't want you to know that peas are the second ingredient. Because if peas are the second ingredient, but they split it into pea protein, pea flour, and whatever else, they can say, it's maybe a third of the amount, actually.
There's so much marketing, and that's what that whole grain-free thing is about. There's nothing. Grains give minerals without extra fat. So dogs need a lot of fat. You don't want to feed a lot of grains.
Right.
Put 2 and 2 together. You want some grains, maybe you don't. You don't have to. But if there's some whole grains, like we use whole brown rice, that's the only grain in any of our carnivore products. But whole brown rice is a very nutritious food. Whole brown rice is really good. And so we add it in because it helps hold the nugget together. It's not so sloppy. It helps us. It helps the dog. It helps the cat. But dogs and cats don't need processed wheat. They don't need processed grain. They don't need processed pea protein, right? And so it's, and I have to say, I don't want to sound all negative because this is the whole thing with carnivore. It's the bridge to raw, right? Feeding a whole foods diet to your family is hard. It is. You are not getting messages from this consumerist culture to cook your food at home, to do things the hard way. You're not. You're getting, here it is in a box. How easy is that? It's only 3 times more expensive, but we're not going to talk about that. But look how easy it is, right? That's the message we're all getting. Change your clothes every day. Wash your hair every day. Useless. Boy, I could stand up and talk about that.
I like it. I like when Maria gets mad.
I've been doing this so many years. I've been doing this education for so many years. It's just so crazy, the messages we get. So take your time. If you want to go into a natural rearing lifestyle, first of all, start where you're at and forget about what other people are doing. Who cares? You've got 4 kids and 2 parents going to work and 3 dogs and a cat and a hamster.
Yep.
Really, you expect you're going to just, throw out all the craft dinner and, your kids are going to, no. Okay.
Right.
Go easy on yourself. Take it a step at a time. Forgive yourself. Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better.
Yes.
And that's the thing. Just do better, one step at a time. Get more and more comfortable. Fill your day with a little bit more time-consuming food prep as you can. Don't freak out. Don't feel bad. That's why there's Carnivore. Fit it in as you need. Someday you might never need to buy a processed food of any kind at all. You might just be that girl that's, cooking and going to the butcher, and that's fantastic.
Right.
But in the meantime, we have to live our lives. We travel. We get sick. We go to the hospital. We ask grandma to watch the baby, the dog, the cat, that's our baby. And she's like, I'm a vegetarian. I'm not touching that, Drop the Carnivore in the bowl, go to Hawaii, come back in a week, your dog's fine.
Yeah.
Right? It's fine. That's
Right.
what this is about. Learn as you go.
I think you touched on something that is so important that I think we all are constantly having to remind ourselves, that being gentle with yourself. Yep. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've met people who have lost dogs and lost cats because they didn't know then what they now know. Yep. And I watch these people just beat themselves up for
God,
it.
Yes.
And they're like, the way that they're speaking about themselves is so cruel. And I'm like, you didn't know that then. Yeah. You didn't know that now, but now you do. Right. And you get to help your next dog, or you get to help your mom's cat or someone. And and there's this knock-on effect, and it is growing, even if it doesn't feel like it.
I think our culture is just so competitive, so consumerist, that we forget we need to be gentle with ourselves and with each other. We just need to encourage each other. This looks like a fabulous community of people that want to learn 2.0. Pet parents love it. Great.
And
take your time.
Bryce, you and Kenzie do exactly that. Like the environment and the community that you create it has this feeling of no judgment, and that you can come in at any level. How do you keep that up?
Yeah. Thank you, first of all. That's one of our core values, because Kenzie and I have been those pet parents. We were the pet parents who were feeding a conventional kibble and then found a podcast with Rodney Habib and Karen Becker and learned all the different things and immediately felt shame about what we were doing. Yeah. But then we took a step back and we said, okay, we didn't do any of the things we did because we didn't love our dogs. In fact, we did the things we did because we loved them so much and because we thought that that was the right thing. So to find out new information is just to get more data to move forward. It's not some story we have to write about the past or something that we might have done wrong, you know?
Yep, exactly. And that goes for everything in your life. Everything. Really, it does.
So you use this term bridge to raw a lot, and I love it, but from a business perspective, I'm expecting to hear the bridge to carnivore. So obviously that's not the case. Can you talk more about what you actually mean by the bridge to raw and how carnivore plays into that?
My whole life has been in natural healthcare. I started doing homeopathy when I was, again, 25. I started doing natural rearing when I was 25. I was a baby. I'm 61. I've been doing this a long time. And I've seen these changes in the world, in not just in the pet industry, but with how people look to heal and grow, right? And for me and Dave, we've made our money. Like, it's not, we're not young. Right. We're not young. So for us, it's about values. I mean, in a nutshell, not to go on and on for 2 hours again. It's about values. And for me personally, not to speak for my husband, but for me personally, I have seen the power of people opening their minds to CBD for pain relief. I have seen the power of homeopathic medicine for every kind of relief. I've seen the power of a natural rearing lifestyle and a natural diet. And I just want people to know that it's there and it's accessible for them. So we feel our product is the bridge to that lifestyle. There is no ultimate because everybody's different. Right. There is no ultimate anything. There's no bridge to fill in the blank. To me, we call it the bridge to raw because raw is a term that everybody understands. What does it mean to you? It means something different to you than it might mean to Lou. right? You know, how you live your life, how organized you are, what you can afford. That could mean different things to each of you. So it's a kind of a general term to meaning just follow your path to the most natural rearing life that you can live for yourself, and don't sweat it. Yeah. That's what we're trying to help people out with carnivore.
Yeah, I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Being able to build in that flexibility, I think, is it's so cool. I mean, I have admittedly been doing these kind of like meal kit things a few days a week, and it's not great and it is expensive, but the time that it buys me is enormous in what then I can actually, when I'm cooking for my dog, when I'm cooking for myself, I can put in the time that is necessary.
The thoughtfulness.
Yes, the thoughtfulness that is necessary so that I
Yes.
can actually ensure that the rest of those meals, even if we have some that are not incredible, that are not perfect, that the rest are.
Yep. So here's what I learned from Juliette de Berkeley-Levy. Juliette was 84 when I met her. She was a world traveler. She was a gypsy woman, independently wealthy, who raised her kids and her Afghan hounds all the same way, traveling, eating herbs, growing herbs. She was the most amazing herbalist. Her idea of raw, feeding your animals, literally kill a goat, bury it in the backyard, leave it for about 5 days,
Let it ferment a little.
then let the dogs out.
I mean,
That's literally what she said. And I'm like, okay,
crazy.
so we need a bridge to that, Julie. Woo,
That's gonna be a
is
tough sell.
Serious. Means something different to everybody.
yeah, that's so interesting. We were having a conversation with Billy Hookman today from Green Juju about this same topic, and it's such a subjective term because honestly, raw to me also includes gently cooked. Not because I think raw is also a gently cooked food, but because, like you said, not every dog's going to do well on a fully raw diet. Not every dog is going to do well on any single diet, homemade, whatever it is. So I think people just need to know that they have options. That's what Angela talks a lot about that I love is people think that they go to the vet and what the vet says are the only options. And it's not to say don't listen to your vet, but if you feel a tug on that gut and something is telling you this might not be right, I maybe should explore something else, listen to that.
Yeah.
And it can change over time.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is, we think that once we've figured it out, then it's done. And then as soon as you think that you've mastered it, then you get a good smack from the universe.
Yep. Because people, animals, the world, it all changes.
Absolutely.
It all evolves.
So we hear this term a lot, complete and balanced. And I know for myself, and I'm sure a lot of other people resonate, they'll go to their vet's office and they'll say, oh, if your food is complete and balanced, you don't need to add anything else. Your food is complete and balanced. Do you agree with that statement?
It's such crap. So complete and balanced is a marketing term, but what it means generally is this has all the basic nutrients AAFCO recommends and requires, and this will keep your dog alive. But there's no such thing as a complete and balanced diet in a package. You have to add fresh foods, and we always recommend that. In fresh foods, like, what does your dog like? Does your dog like some nice pasture-raised cottage cheese mixed in? Maybe your dog likes it, maybe my dog doesn't. My dog loved peanut butter, right? You would mix some peanut butter in it. Maybe shredded carrots, right, would be what you can manage. So it's what you can manage, and it's what your animal likes. And what do you need? Do you need more fat? Do you need more protein? Do you want to crack a few eggs in it? Whatever you're feeding, you should feed some fresh foods with it, at least occasionally. Not every day if you're rushing out. Maybe not in the morning when you got to get kids to school, you got to get off to work, you got to drive. But maybe in the evening when you have a little more time to be thoughtful about your meal prep, you can then add those fresh foods in, whatever you can fit in. But I mean, complete and balanced is it's a legal term, right? So you can't sell a dry dog food or a pet diet, let's put it that way, without stating whether it's complete and balanced or not.
Well, and is it complete and balanced kind of a sham anyway because of the nutrient variability?
Yes.
I mean, you talk about you grow something in southern Texas and you grow something in western Oregon. Those are going to be very different. It's totally different conditions. The soil is totally different. So I feel like to say that, your food has to hit this exact thing is such a closed-minded way of looking at it without understanding all the nuance in there.
Yeah, and if you drill down into too many details, you'll drive yourself nuts.
I bet.
And then just be ready to feed like Juliette. If that's how you're going to do it, go kill that goat. But if you're not interested in doing that, there are so many options. Don't drill down so much.
Right.
Just do what you can manage.
Right.
Educate yourself constantly. Adapt as your animals change, as your animals grow. Adapt as your family changes, as your needs changes. You might get a new job and suddenly you're never at home. What are you going to do? Now you got to get a dog walker because realistically you've got a 2-hour commute. I mean, these are how our lives go. So just be gentle on yourself.
And I would encourage people to also just play with it. Just start playing
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what your dog is going to react to, but like you said, throw an egg one day. If
Yeah.
that doesn't sit well with them, maybe they don't do eggs.
Yeah.
Maybe try a duck egg next
Throw
time.
some crickets in.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
seriously.
I don't know.
There's a lot of different things. And also people's food scraps. There's
Yep.
always the question about how do I start adding more fresh food in an affordable way. And
Yep.
I don't know about you, but when Kenzie and I make food, we're throwing out so many tops of carrots and the butts of lettuce. And
Yep.
you can blend all that together, pour
Yep.
it over the kibble, and that's
Yeah.
not free fresh food, but you were going to throw it out anyway, so it's kind of free.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, blenders are an amazing thing. The
Yeah.
Vitamix was a great invention.
One of my one of my
Oh my
favorite
God, I love
purchases
it.
ever.
I love it.
We are sponsored.
Yeah, this podcast is sponsored by
Thank
Vitamix.
you, Mr. Vitamix.
Oh, that's amazing. Maria, you're an absolute wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for
you're
being
very
here.
welcome.
And we're going to bring her out for the Q&A at the end as well. So if you have questions, be sure to hold on to
I'll
them.
be here.
But thank you very
Thanks,
much.
You're
Maria.
welcome. Okay.
Our next guests that we're going to be bringing on are, of course, a local favorite. It is Jay and Adrian from the Two Crazy Cat Ladies, and these women are such an incredible wealth of knowledge. Also, the founders of come on, we are among some really impressive people. The founders of Feline Essentials as well, which is having something of a debut here. So we're going to talk about that
very soon.
later. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jay and Adrian, the Two Crazy Cat Ladies.
Well, thank you both so much for being here today. I have to say, this is a first for the book tour. We have not had any cat people on that specialize
Really?
in cats.
Really?
So, I mean, it was called
Come
the Modern
on.
Dog Parent Book Tour, but we're incredibly grateful to have you here today, and I'm very excited to kind of be able to share some of that cat side with our community because they definitely don't get enough of it. So, before we get into it, how did you become the Two Crazy Cat Ladies in the brand sense? I can guess how you became Two Crazy Cat Ladies just regularly.
What does that mean?
Right? So we started in pet nutrition in 2005 with my family business, and it was supplement companies. We were there for 10 years when we learned a lot about dogs.
And we love dogs.
And we love
Which is
dogs.
why I'm very distracted
We really
right
love
now.
dogs. But we had cats, and there wasn't any resources out there for cat people. I'm sorry, I keep touching your leg.
Ow.
I'll just hold you. And so we decided in 2015 to branch off and become the resource that we so long to find.
Our motto is learn, share, and grow. We are not experts. I don't know who was throwing that word around.
Sorry,
But
I think you are.
Especially after that incredible talk with Maria, that was amazing.
Very cool. So I think that we talk a lot about feeding dogs more fresh food, and one of the reasons is the moisture content. We stress moisture so much. This seems to be an even bigger factor in the cat space. So
Much.
what's the issue with dry food for cats? What happens when that's all that they're eating?
Right. So cats that are fed a dry food diet, and I guess this is for dogs as well, but they live in a state of dehydration, right? Like their entire lives. And when it comes to our cats, they don't drink from the water bowl in the same way that dogs do, right? So dogs, when their tongues, they like act as a ladle and they drink water. Cats, if you've ever watched a cat drink water, they like get one drop at a time. They put their tongue down and it's like one drop. So they're physically unable to get the amount of moisture that their bodies need from that water bowl. So that's why a moisture-rich diet is so important.
Well, and cats are also obligate carnivores, a little bit different than dogs. So they're meant to, like Jay said, get the majority of their moisture from their food. Their tongues are made to lick meat off the bone and to groom themselves. So that's why a lot of times it's like my cats, if so many times people will come to us with a cat that they're freaking out because they don't see him drinking water. And we're like, well, what are you feeding him? And they're like, well, a fully balanced raw diet. And we're like, well, that would be why.
Even our dogs, when we switch them to raw, drink significantly less water because I mean you're increasing the moisture content by 60-70% sometimes in
One of
those.
our cats is 6 years old, and we literally like a month or two ago, for the first time, saw him drink
I took a video because
from the water bowl, and it scared us. We were like, "Uh-oh, is something wrong with him? Like, what is going on?" Yeah.
I saw him drinking, and I pulled up my phone and got a video and showed it to Jay. I was like, do we need to be worried about this? This is the first time we've seen him drink water.
That's awesome. So if all they can afford is a dry food, what can they do to change that? How can they improve that to give their cat a little bit more moisture through their diet?
Well, like Maria said, we can always add a little bit of fresh food in there, and there's a moisture content there. But you can also add bone broth. You can add, you can add water to the kibble as well. Bone broth is just going to be a little bit better. But adding some like fresh meat. You cook for your family, and you have some extra chicken, and put it aside and feed that to your cat. They love it.
I think one of the big things with cats, though, is that when you do realize that moisture is so important for them, and you're like, oh my God, yeah, I'm going to go get them a can of food, or I'm going to start adding something into their, and then they turn their nose up at it. And then they're like, well, obviously that doesn't work. So I think one of the biggest things for cat people to realize is that just because you try something once doesn't mean it's a one and done. We had one cat that took more than 6 months to transition from kibble to a wet food, to a raw food, and it was me that was the problem. Because anytime I made a sound that sounded like his old kibble bag, it broke my heart. He would come running with his 20 pounds on him. He'd come running and be like, oh my God, it's back, right? It's us humans, I think, that need to recognize. And there was a great study that was done, I think, in Japan, 2014, that proved that cats, if given the choice over time, would choose a food that is more nutritionally, biologically appropriate for them. So, and balanced, yeah. So that, I think, when it comes to starting to realize the importance of moisture, I think one of the conversations that needs to be had is about us and what it takes to deal with a finicky kitty, and recognizing that we are their only choice for something better and something that's going to help them thrive more. So
on this same vein, I've learned a lot recently about kind of how the microbiome is formed and continues to stay healthy, and how when you have these animals that are on these really carbohydrate rich diets, the bacteria that grows and their microbiome becomes kind of akin to that type of food. And when you take that away, it actually psychologically they feel the pull for that from the bacteria that want to continue eating it as well.
Kind of like people.
It's
Kinda
been
like
likened
people.
to a heroin addiction in people.
Right.
It's that there is an actual addiction when we talk about kibble addicts.
So if you have a heroin addicted cat, how do you start weaning them? What does that process actually look like?
I think it starts with the compassion of recognizing that you're dealing with an addict, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not about trying to do something cold turkey. It's about the long game. It's really about recognizing that this is a situation where we are their only option for something better, and we have to make that decision. We have to be, what do you always say? Persevere.
Patience and perseverance pays.
Yeah.
Is kind of like our motto. I'll say that louder. Patience and perseverance pays. When it comes to our cats specifically, because it's they're not, most dogs, and every animal is an individual, but the majority of dogs are pretty easy to transition to a different diet, right? You put down the food. If they won't eat it, then that's actually fine. They're not going to starve to death, right? Cats will. So you can't starve a cat like you can, and by starve, I mean, you can't fast a cat as long as you can fast a dog.
Pull mama and be like, if you don't eat your dinner, that's all you get, right? You can't do that.
For an extended period of time, yes. And cats won't do that. They'll put their nose up because they're addicts, right? So
it is about those baby steps. It's like Maria said, start with one thing. I love that advice so much, because I am easily overwhelmed. And when it comes to all this information that's out there and ways that we can make their diets better, we are their only option, right? Then it's like, what is the one thing that we can do? And just having just calm down about it. Don't freak out. Just start small and be persistent.
And also understand that cats are addicted to texture as well.
Right.
That is
okay.
So when it comes to kibble, and you've only ever fed them kibble, then you put down some wet food. They literally don't know that it's food. They're like, that's not food. I'm not going to eat that. So you have to, be patient with them. Maybe we're switching to a baked diet. Maybe we're switching to a freeze dried, maybe, something that is like of the same type of texture. And then slowly, they're getting a little bit of a more nutritious diet, obviously. And then we're slowly adding in a little bit of moisture. We're adding in maybe some wet food, even if it's the crappiest of wet food, like something that is like slowly moving them step by step. And eventually you will get them onto a better diet. It might take some time. It might take 6 months. It might take a year. It might take, I don't know. But
it might take 2 weeks. You got to start.
Yeah, it might take a week.
Well,
but start somewhere.
I think what's interesting is a lot of people, kind of like we were just talking about, this bridge to raw. A lot of people think they have to end up at DIY, homemade, made from scratch raw food. That's how Kenzie and I started.
Yes.
But I think we also need to accept being okay wherever we land on the spectrum.
Yep.
If you get your cat to a medium grade wet food and that's where they thrive, congratulations.
Yeah.
Continue that. Keep doing what's working for them. And like Maria said, don't be influenced by all these people that are feeding all these amazing fancy bowls. That's not the end goal for everyone.
Yeah.
That's
It's
where
pretty,
that
though.
person got.
Yeah. Do you know it wasn't until COVID, actually, until the pandemic hit, that we took the wet food out of our cats' raw food because they were like, we had some seniors, they were pretty finicky, they were, picky. So about the smell specifically. So we would always put, there would be like 6 cats and we would put like a 1 can or a half a can or something of wet food into their raw. And it was fine because it was like, whatever, they're getting their fresh food.
And it made the raw last longer.
Yeah. And then when
Just
the
saying.
pandemic hit and stores closed down and everything was really hard to get, we were like, sorry guys, I don't know what we're going to do. We started putting green juju on top. And they ate it just fine. They actually ate their food without any, and we were like, we're going to save a whole lot of money because wet food is actually, if you're getting a good quality wet food, it is like more expensive than buying. Yeah, it can be more expensive than buying a raw food.
That's so interesting.
And if you're doing them both, you're just like, living in squalor and your cats are living like life.
That's awesome. So walk me through like a regular day in the life of you two and your cats, the feeding routines, all the different things.
You
I
want
want
the
to know
truth?
what it's actually like. Yeah.
I think that's what they want is the truth.
Okay.
So we get up about 6 a.m. Jay goes and washes all the dishes. I do the litter, vacuum the floors. She warms up their food, feeds all the babies. Green juju is literally, we're not joking about that. It is part of our cats' daily lives. We put the little crumbles on top.
Which is also another, if anybody's trying to transition your cat from a kibble to like a wet food or a raw food, if you take that kibble and just crush it up and put that powder on top, it is a great trickery, if you will, to getting your cat to eat a better diet.
You're literally weaning them off of it.
Yeah.
So that's like the morning routine.
That's morning
That's
routine.
breakfast.
The rest of the day is like crazy. And then at 4 o'clock, my phone says, feed the cats again, which is why we were a little late tonight. So I was
and we do have sometime feeders out for a little snack for them at 12, and then they get another little snack at 11 p.m. But their main meals are about 6:30 in the morning and 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon.
But we're 4 times a day feeders now.
Yeah,
4 times a day.
Yeah, 4 times a day.
And that
I mean,
I just want to
there's tiny
say,
snacks. They're tiny, tiny amounts, but yeah.
But it is all about.
There's
what
a
you can
lot
manage.
of science when it comes to cats, and there's not a lot of science when it comes to cats, but there's a lot of studies out there about how cats should eat and how much they should eat. And I'm not going to say I know any of them, but I'll say that the smaller meals multiple times a day has worked well for our cats. Yeah.
That's so interesting because I mean, a lot of you hear from like Karen and Rodney. They'll talk about feeding once a day, at least in the dog world, being very beneficial. But
Our cats,
We asked our cats about that, and they said no
Oh, yeah.
way. Yeah.
that's a
But even they say often, like, it really does depend on the animal that you've got in front of you, and
Exactly.
Yes.
you look at older animals as well. Those like the intermittent fasting with them just isn't possible. They benefit from the smaller meals. The dogs who once ate all raw that need a gently cooked diet later in life as their metabolism changes.
Yeah. And cats are really, it's really important to keep routine with cats as much as possible. But I will say that, like when we're traveling a lot right now, like there's a lot of stuff going on. I actually really like having like these certain times where it's like, okay, you know what? They're not going to get dinner tonight, and that's going to be good for them. A small fasting is good. It's good for all of us, all mammals. But
The cats are still on the fence about that one.
yeah, but on the regular, they get 4 meals a day.
So we talk a lot about food, but you guys actually have a supplement line to kind of go with that. Can you talk about Feline Essentials and what kind of products you offer and what you're hoping to accomplish there?
Yeah, so we're really excited because this is our very first store in Las Vegas that we are actually launching our products.
There you are, Megan.
Yes. And so I told you we started in the supplement industry. So when we branched off as two crazy cat ladies, the first thing we did was reach out to our holistic animal scientist in Oklahoma who formulates or was doing some formulations for my family business for dogs. And I asked him if there was anything that would be, good specific for cats. Lo and behold, he is like a huge rescuer. He had rescued over 100 cats, brought them in himself, not just from the side of the road in Oklahoma, brought them in. He built a huge catio in the backyard. He had, I think at that time, his own 17 cats or something. And he had been creating these formulas to heal the cats that he was rescuing. And they're all natural formulas, and he's a holistic animal scientist. And we were really, 10 years working with him, we had no idea that any of this, that he did any of this.
And no one had ever asked him to formulate. And I think the biggest thing for us is that we really, working with cats and knowing supplements, we were very familiar with the benefits of supplements. And I think Karen, Dr. Becker, and Rodney really say it best that, you can go anywhere and find oh my God, all these awesome supplements. I will take the whole shelf. Thank you. Yeah. Right. It's very important to know what you're supplementing for. And why. So, for us, whenever there was something that we knew would be so beneficial for our cats, but it comes in the form that is, more palatable or more convenient for dogs. So we wanted everything to be liquid. We wanted things to be fuss-free, human grade, all made in the USA, all the stuff and things, but also something that was going to be easy for our cats. That wasn't going to be traumatic. If we I had to do B12 shots for our Mr. Biddles, and I don't like needles, and he didn't like them either. So it's great to have the non-synthetic oral B12. It's fantastic. There are so many things that we can do when we look at it from the cat's perspective of what's going to be most palatable for them, most fuss-free for humans, and less traumatic for our cats, or not traumatic at all, actually.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so interesting. And I believe that some of your supplements focus on gut health. Is it true that you have actual evidence that they work?
Shout out to IPL.
There's an incredible lab here in the house that had the beautiful idea of doing, and this, we're talking about the science for cats. There's not a lot out there. Jamie, Katie, Lacey is not here. I know she's here in spirit. Love this company, love this mission so much. They said, what if we were to do a clinical study, a 3-month clinical study of cats that have that have IBD, IBS,
or GI
issues, right? And we couldn't. I think the only hard part, they're the scientists. The only hard part for us was that we could not have them change their food. Right?
We couldn't coach. We couldn't coach anyone.
It was only
diet.
with this. So we put together. Jay had actually been thinking about this, or put together our gut restore kit a while before, and we were getting some really good feedback before the trial. So and it had digestive enzymes and probiotics and the B12 and our OxyCat, which is an alkaline formula. So for 3 months, these cats were studied, and they took the test at the beginning, and they were they have all the scientific words. Jamie,
Yeah.
I kind of
So
Jamie.
they did a baseline test, and like they mentioned, they had to have some sort of symptom. We looked at their symptom scores, and then we did a baseline analysis. Okay. Of 6 different analytes in their gut, areas like inflammation, immunity, leaky gut markers, digestion, and detoxification pathways. And then, like they mentioned, we had to stick to just adding the supplement. That's the only thing they could change. And then we retested them at the 3-month mark, and 66% that came in with a leaky gut showed not only improvement to the normal ranges, but other areas like inflammation as well. There was a couple really sick kitties that came in that if we got them to at least borderline, and then there was only, but the rest of them showed mass improvement where 66 came in with leaky gut, and by the end of it, all of them had healed. So
Yeah, it was pretty. yeah.
So it was
pretty
really exciting for us because it's something, I think, not having a lot of science out there for cats.
and not being like certified in all these,
We have
things,
no
just
fancy
having,
letters.
19 years of experience basically of working with animals, but not having, like some schooling or degree in it. I literally put it together being like, this is what we need for this and this is what we need for that. And I really think that, the studies show that they're low in B12. And so these are the things that we need, and let's sell this. But, now actually getting some kind of like, affirmation showing that
I will say that almost everybody that we told about this incredible study, so many people said, why would you do that? Like, why would you do that? Like, we believe in our products, but everyone was like, but what if?
Right.
And we were like, then we shut it down.
Right. Then we change it.
We want to know. We
wanna
want to know the
know.
truth.
Yeah.
So it was incredible. And I think that's one of the biggest things, especially for cats, because they're so stoic and because GI issues, IBD, IBS, I do feel like so many of these cats are suffering. Where's Gary? Is Gary still here?
Oh.
Gary, we love you. Gary is a really good example of someone that's suffering with a cat that is kind of diagnosed with an IBD issue, but we're treating it. It can be a really frustrating thing. It can really infringe on the cat's quality of life. And they can't tell us when they're not feeling well. They can't tell us that, this food makes them feel.
Well, and traditional medicine basically treats it with steroids.
Right.
Right. So it's like they're trying to, and you can't do that long term. Like you're taking years off their life by just giving them steroids and that's it. And that's why we love holistic medicine so much, is because you get to the root of the issue and then, that's how you resolve.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. We were having a conversation this morning that what you said reminded me of. If there's no amount of evidence that could change your mind on something, that to me is a pretty closed-minded approach. And it sounds like that, like you guys agree, because you wanted to do this study, even risking that your product might actually not do what you want it to do.
For sure.
But you probably did it because you thought, okay, if it doesn't do that, we're going back to the drawing board. We're going to figure out how to make it do this.
Exactly.
It still doesn't stop how many cats are dealing with this issue. And I think that was it is our biggest passion, because we've been there. We haven't really learned anything the easy way. We learn a lot of stuff the hard way. So I mean, it was an incredible experience to have that opportunity to do the study, and then to have the feedback is one of the most fulfilling things when we can actually work with clients for a long duration of time and say, listen, don't give up. Listen, here's this study. We actually have something we can show them and say there is hope.
And we did, after the study, we did reach out and say, okay, now we need to change the diet, because we know that, that number is going to go up much more if we get them on some good food.
Yeah.
There's this perception that there's no evidence around natural medicine. I mean, excluding that, anecdotal evidence is evidence. Case studies are evidence, but I think people don't realize that part of the reason is because the bulk of this research for kind of traditional Western is funded by, they've got deep pockets, so they're putting out studies that support what they have, and so you can't, as Angela, our founder, always says, you can't patent nature. And so, nobody's going out there to prove that the compounds in an orange and everything around vitamin C is great for your immunity. Right. But then, folks like yourself who can really put this kind of empirical evidence out there, we're currently in the early stages of our first clinical study that we're funding. So we're going to be studying the benefits of medicinal mushrooms like lion's mane, reishi, and cordyceps for dogs with CCD, so doggy dementia. Because just as you did, we saw this and we're like, we talked to so many vets who are like, well, there's no evidence, or people. There are certain people who will not believe this until they see it on paper in a placebo-controlled trial. This had this effect, and as the further we continue to move this marker, the more people we can help.
Right.
Oh, so true.
And I think in like the kibble world, there's a lot of pressure on the raw feeding community to produce all this research on fresh feeding and how it compares to kibble.
Because we all have 100,000 million billion dollars.
And to me, that seems so backwards. It's like, I feel like people right now think that raw feeding and fresh feeding is like this new fad, but like, up until 100 years ago, that was the standard. We were feeding fresh food. There was nothing else.
Right.
And it's like, I think the challenge should be on the people trying to bring something brand new to the market to prove that it's safe and it's okay for animals to eat long term, So What's next for Jay and Adrian? What's next for the two crazy cat ladies?
Well, it's after 5, so we need a drink.
Steiner's is next door. We'll see everyone there in 10 minutes. I'm joking. Right now we're really excited about. It's kind of convention season right now, which is really amazing to be in the presence of people that we work with and people that we learn from, and a lot of the giants in the pet health community. It's a really exciting time. It's really busy. When things calm down a little bit, we're really excited about, just spreading the message more. I think we learn so much from our community and with our community.
But she forgets that we are actually in the midst of
are we
launching a hyperthyroid product for cats,
cool.
formulated by the world-renowned canine herbalist, Rita Hogan. We haven't figured out a name, and we don't have the label, but we have the formula, and it's been tested, and it's kitty approved. So yeah, that's actually next, but we don't know when, like in a month.
Yeah.
Definitely by the end of the year. We don't know.
For
Time
sure.
is flying by. But yeah, we are always looking for, and that's, I think, what we learn so much from our community. They help us recognize different needs. We've had a number of cats over our years together, but it's like I remember when Jay put together a feline hyperesthesia kit. We were working with cats that were a couple different clients. They were like, I don't know what's wrong with my cat. He's eating himself raw. He's twitching all the time. Nothing calms him down. They've tried kitty Prozac. They've tried gabapentin. They've tried all these things. And Jay did the deep dive into the research, right? And was like, it's an idiopathic issue that he seems to have environmental and nutritional stressors. So let's try putting these two products together and seeing if that makes an impact. And I think that's what's next for us.
We want
is
to
just
do more and
continuing
more of
to learn
finding
and
answers.
continuing to
Share.
share
So that
and
we
grow.
can grow.
Cool.
That's where that motto comes from.
Yeah.
I love that. Well,
cool.
thank you both for everything that you do. Thank you for
Thank you,
being here
guys.
with us today. And the community is a better place because of you too.
I would just like to say Vegas is a cool place with all you people here too.
Yeah,
just
right?
let's go.
I like
Yeah,
Vegas.
it's a lot
Let's
of
go.
fun.
Thank you so much
Yeah,
for having us.
absolutely.
We love you.